Startup Forum, co-hosted by Fiki and TurboStart. It is an honor to have each and every one of you here with us today as we dive a little deeper into the exciting and dynamic interplay between investments and entrepreneurship. As we gather here with a shared passion for innovation and the relentless pursuit of success, our theme for this forum resonates strongly: Investment Thesis 2023 and beyond. We believe that this theme encapsulates the spirit of our time, where startups and investors alike are navigating an ever-evolving landscape and making crucial decisions that will shape the future of businesses. As this evening unfolds, and we have a curated dynamic program designed to foster insightful conversations and ignite new thoughts. We are privileged to host distinguished individuals who have excelled in their respective domains, bringing forth their expertise, experience, and knowledge. I'd like to welcome Mahesh Bhalla, Managing Partner at M3B Capital. Mahesh has over 25 years of experience building successful businesses in India. He is an industry veteran, having held leadership positions in the fields of sales and marketing, general management across a swath of consumer and technology industries. These experiences have contributed to his deep understanding of Indian markets, both in terms of consumer behavior and technology trends. Mahesh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Am I audible at the back? Okay, with that, a very, very warm welcome to the Startup Forum hosted by Fiki in association with TurboStart. Unfortunately, Mr. Nirankar Saxena, Deputy Secretary General of Fiki, could not be here today due to a last-minute flight cancellation. So in his stead, I am delighted to stand before you and open the floor for this event today. We've got two very, very interesting topics that we'll be covering. Our audience today covers investors, aspiring entrepreneurs, founders, as well as industry experts. And I hope all of you will take back something with you today. In terms of the first topic, it is with regard to startups. As we all know, startups all have a desire to disrupt the industry and grow fast. And some investors like myself are also guilty of pushing them to grow very, very fast. In fact, somebody from our community invented the term grow big or go home. And in their enthusiasm and energy to grow fast, sometimes they burn a lot of money. And so this whole tie-up, or rather I would say trade-off between revenue and profitability is a challenge. So that is what the first panel is going to focus on today. They will unravel the complexities of this growth profitability dilemma and explore strategies that can enable startups to navigate it successfully. So I'm hoping this will be of interest to a lot of you on how to do this balancing act very, very carefully. The second topic is around AI, which has witnessed remarkable advancements, and the emergence of generative AI has opened up a world of possibilities. But as with any transformative technology, there are always some questions. Today, our second panel will delve into questions on the captivating realm of generative AI investments and the risks, rewards, and ethical considerations with this exciting frontier. So hopefully by the end of this forum, we will equip you with valuable knowledge and actionable strategies that can guide your startup journey. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, existing founder, and an investor seeking further growth or profitability, we encourage you to actively participate, because conversation is what is going to be very important to improving the understanding of everybody. The collective understanding goes up. So a lot of conversations are important after you get a chance to hear the industry experts. Please do speak up, have a good conversation among yourselves, as well as ask questions. The more participative this is, the better it's going to be for everybody. So thank you. With that, I'll hand over back.
Thank you, Mahesh, for opening the forum. Our first panel, Scaling Smart, Decoding the Growth Profitability Dilemma in Startups, will delve into the intricate balance between rapid growth and sustainable profitability. On today's panel, we have with us Mr. Ullas Kamath, who is the former MD of Jyoti Laboratories, an independent director at V-Guard Industries, Snapdeal, and Veranda Learning Solutions. Additionally, he serves on the board of the Invest Karnataka Forum and is the chairman of the Fiki Karnataka State Council. Our second panelist, Mr. Harinarayan Sharma, the CEO of Manipal Foundation. Amongst his numerous roles, he handles early and late-stage investments. He handles investments for the Manipal Group, Prior to that, he has had significant experience leading investment banking teams in various NBFCs. Our third panelist, Mr. Sultan Ahmad, a passionate educator, a first-generation social entrepreneur, and the founder of LXL Ideas, Mentor Magazine, and Crayon Events. He has been the winner of 7 prestigious President of India National Film Awards and has impacted in education in over 15 countries. For over 2 decades, he has been working on a mission to create experiences for children, giving them experiences for lessons of life. He also serves as a mentor to multiple startups. The panel will now be moderated by Ms. Nikita Sivakumar, co-founder of the Canvas.
Thanks so much for joining us today, everybody. So not so long ago, the word unicorn was the buzzword everywhere, right? Startups and investors alike were chasing that tag by relentlessly pursuing growth at all costs, raising round after round of funding, and riding down a valuation high. Startups were then faced with a harsh reality check in 2022 due to the overall economic downturn. Startups had to take a fresh look at their business and understand that ultimately they were in charge of their own destiny. They had to increase the bottom line and completely decrease their dependency on external fundraising. Now, for startups looking to raise funds, the burning topic is on where the focus should be: growth, profitability, or a combination of the two. Now, my first question, open to all the panelists here today: are there any specific industries or business models where the growth and profitability dilemma seems to be more pronounced? And in that case, how can startups in these areas navigate them successfully, in your opinion? On the spot.
Hey, Nikki, thank you. And it's great to be here. It's always exciting to be part of panels that talk about business and how things go in this entire space. I love the words that you used, right? There's one word called burn. I think it's burnt now, right? And it's no longer valid because, especially in the space that I work in, I've had a ringside view of seeing 3 different peaks in the education sector. There was a good one that happened around 2008 and 9, if all of you remember the good old days of EduComp and the smart class. And then you had the whole technology intervention that came in around the 2016, 2015, and the massive noise we heard last year. But from the ringside that I've seen, all businesses are not about profitability, they're not about scale, they're about, are you making a difference? Are you adding value to the customer that you've promised a certain service or a product? And that's one thing that's not changed. In the intermediary, you do find that a lot of startups, the young startups, that follow trends. And the most recent one was about everyone getting into the education space. And everyone trying to do a B2C. And everyone trying to do the same math, same science, same test prep, and same coaching. And funnily enough, you also had the investors investing in them. And for people like me, what's happening now had to happen. Because you were not focusing on the basics of any business that's built on adding value to the customer that you set out to add value. If you are a service, you better give more service than what you've told your customer. Because in the same startup language, we use 2 words. There's a word called as CAC and there's a word called as the LTV, right? If you focus so much on your CAC, that's your client acquisition, and forget that there's something called as a lifetime value. And lifetime value only comes from focusing on delivering more than what you valued. So that's how I've seen, and this is more specific from my sector, and I wouldn't want to comment on others, but I can talk about the media industry as well, right? Because I make films and I've been a part of the events industry, and if you look at it from that point of view, that's one industry which has actually struggled for almost 2 decades that I've seen to productize anything that they've done. So for them, it has always been about doing projects that were always profitable. There are very few cases of very large acquisitions that have happened in the media industry, which have gone on to be profitable or which have gone on to be sustaining, simply because most media industries are, again, people-oriented. So lots of brands have been bought and sold. I run a company called Crayon. We're an events company. I know in the past 5 years, multiple events companies were bought over by the WPPs and the big multinational companies. And most of them buy the brand, and eventually you realize there's nothing in the brand apart from the people. And once the people quit, because you have a 2 years lock-in, and after that, you're gone. So eventually, all businesses are about adding value and taking care of the people. So that's the long and short of it.
Thank you, Sultan. Very well said. Anything you'd like to add, Hari, Mr. Kamal?
Thank you, Nikita. I come from brick and mortar industry, and we took 30 years, 28 factories, 2,300 salesmen, covering 1 million retail outlets, placing a product in shops every month, and took 25 years to build $1 billion enterprise. Whereas in Koramangala, 30 people, 3 years, nobody knows who are they. They come on Economic Times directly, and they build $1 billion enterprise. And both are true, and we are very, very proud of them. Today, the fact that we are sitting here and talking about the startup itself is a big thing in Indian context. Just imagine that the startup word was not there at all. The B2B was not there. D2C was not there. Burn was not there. Capital was not there. People were not there. All these kids will have been in US. Correct?
That's very true.
We are very, very happy that they're here. They're willing to come down here, discuss about it, and answering your question, whether the top line is important, or growth is important, or customers are important, or profit is important. Business means money. End of the day, you need to have the money in the bank after paying the taxes. Correct? And you need to build the business through capital, through the debt, and you need to have every element of the business in place, and then only the value will come. And for example, in FMCG business, we manufacture, we distribute, and we build the brands, and the customer buys it. But these startup kids have found business within the business, that they call it as a disruption, which is true, that how many times loading unloading happens of my Ujala or Maxo or Exo or Margo? Maybe 7 times. But if they bring it down to 2 times, then there's a huge value accretion, which we can't do it. They do it. And they call it as a supply chain. And we let them do that, and we are extremely happy. There's a value for us and a value for them. And for them, we are customer acquisition. They spend money on us, and we are fine with that. But at some point in time, things will settle down. They understand what is sales, what is profit, what is tax, and what is profit after tax, and earning per share. And we understand what startups are doing and why we can't do it. So we hire the failed startups. So we get the technology from them, because they have done 90%. In the startup world, 99% is not complete. 100% is complete only when you get the exit and the money in the bank. So this is the time wherein a lot of probably companies who are $1 billion, $2 billion enterprises in the regular brick and mortar are trying to see that what they can do with the startup, with the ideas, or with some failed attempts, and bring them on board and give them the ecosystem to build on that. We will be able to move towards the startup ecosystem very quickly. And for them, it is difficult to buy land, building, machinery, people. That's not there. So it's a combination of both, what I think. But it's the best thing what could happen to India is the disruption, what's happening now. And everybody cannot win the race. Only few will win the race. And we should be very proud about that winners, right? So to that extent, I, for one, we need to have a combination of all 3 together to win.
Thanks, Ullas. Thanks, Nikita, for calling us for this session. And thank you for both of you to have actually completed the whole scope of what this question was all about. And this morning when I was just thinking about, what exactly are we trying to address in this question of scale versus growth, I was going back to 20 years back, or maybe 25 years back. Was this ever a question when somebody wanted to set up a business that I will be profitable, but I will not scale? These two are oxymorons. You can't be profitable and not scale. So this question, I think, it's not a dilemma actually. It's a dilemma which has got created by, sad to say, the investor community. Saying that, okay, you pursue growth even at the cost of profitability, I'm willing to fund. And therefore, there's been a mad race towards wherever money goes. So I think fundamentally these two equations of profitability and growth are key to any business, provided, as colleague said, Sultan said, that you create value. So long as you create value and you create value at scale, profitability has to occur, and without that there is no success. And without that profitability, there is no growth possible either. You can't be dependent on somebody else to keep on putting money on you to grow. You have to generate your own capital to grow. So that's my first take on this whole dilemma. It's not a dilemma, it's reality, and sooner we'll learn to live with the reality that both these are coexistent and have to be managed simultaneously, success will be there. It requires patience. Unfortunately, this rush for growth has been at the cost of patience, because everybody is in a mood to say, when can I become the unicorn, or some other terminology that will come in, and that is where we are running into the situation where 1 out of 10 only succeed and 9 fail. The second thing that struck me was, I'm a cost accountant by qualification, and today I don't think there will be any cost accountant in this room. And I was wondering, why did I do this cost accountancy at some point of time, and I thought it was most irrelevant then. But then, in a situation where today, where we are saying we are selling a product revenue has got essentially 4 or 5 services which contribute to the sale. And each item of that revenue has a cost structure to it. And unless you make money on each of those line items, there's no profitability at the end of it. Maybe there is some compensation at one level of a revenue item versus the other. So that's the time when I realized, and I felt proud that, okay, I have done some worthwhile program 30 years back of being a cost accountant. I think fundamentally we have to learn how to cost our product. We cannot just say that somebody else is offering a program or an education program, as Sultan said, at a particular price, and then therefore I can better it by 10%. What does it cost me to make that product more efficiently than what he does, so that I make money and destabilize him should be the game. What I'm doing otherwise, as so many education products have come in, what he does, I try to tweak it and make it different and make it appear different and try to make some incremental money, but that's not sustainable. I think the key would be to ensure that each item of your revenue is profitable and at scale is what will give sustainability to business. So that's my little bit of a theoretical analysis of that. This is not a dilemma. This is the way businesses have to be built. And my request to all the youngsters and not so youngsters who are starting something different, please focus on how are you going to build business profitability and scalable. These are not independent, isolated events. Thank you.
Can I just add a couple of points
Sure,
on this?
thanks, Suzanne.
One, I've had the opportunity to be on the ring side of a lot of board meetings with investors and founders, and I think what's very important is for founders to have a lot of conviction in what they're doing and to stay focused on that, and for investors to play the role of being investors. So a lot of times what happens is in trying to pursue the idea, because you ask any idiot on the road for any opinion and everyone's got an opinion. So as a founder, if you are sitting on the board, you need to have the conviction as to what to listen from the investors and what not to. And a lot of time I've seen, and this can be as recently as a year ago, when I was doing some consulting work with Unacademy, I realized that some of the decisions that they were being forced down the throat of the founders from the investors were downright stupid, but the founders were willing to bend the rules and do that for them. So I think the conviction from the entrepreneurs is really important, and if there are investors over here, the entrepreneur knows the business, right? So trust sometimes and allow them that freedom. Here's another very interesting point. This has to do with profitability. Just a couple of days ago, I took my team to Design Cafe. Geeta, a very good friend of mine who founded that. They were spending loads of money on client acquisition. And eventually it was the Googles and the Facebooks that were making the money. So what they've done, Design Cafe and Home Lane and 3 or 4 other players, the CEOs have come together and they've decided that they're not going to bid against each other digitally. So it's an unwritten rule. There's nothing written, because eventually on this dogfight of trying to acquire the client, there's somebody else who was making the money. So here are smart entrepreneurs coming in and saying, hey, listen, let's come together and not outbid each other digitally so that we all save our own money. So there's some smart moves like that can also add to profitability.
Thanks so much, Ruslan. I think definitely the point about value, bringing value to the customers, regardless of what industry, what business model that you're in, if you focus on that, definitely certain success can definitely come. So my next question is specifically to Hari. So you play an integral role in identifying, evaluating, and mentoring startups at multiple stages within the portfolio of Manipal Group, as well as in your own personal capacity. Can you share any experiences where you've seen startups successfully navigate or maybe unsuccessfully navigate this dilemma or not so dilemma as you just mentioned?
Yeah. So of course I can't take names, but there are two of them which come to my mind. One is into a product manufacturing entity, and the other, which is again started by a couple of our students from the engineering school. And the other is, of course, a large-scale healthcare provider. So the ones which were started by these youngsters, they were very clear that they have only X amount of money with them. And they were very clear about the product that they were making. And they said this product is successful because of its uniqueness in the marketplace. And they knew this, they had only so much of money, nobody is going to give them money beyond whatever BIRAC grant or whatever grants are available. So they focused on making the product absolutely on a shoestring budget and saying, this is the most optimal. They spent 2 years in building the product. They built the design in the most efficient manner. They got all the features that they wanted in the product built in right from day one. They didn't say, I will do a pilot one and then I will add more features. They were very clear also that this is the price at which somebody is going to buy, and the government is the largest buyer. So they work backwards from saying, if this is the price at which I want to make the product, how do I source my components? How do I make my design more efficient so that the value addition which my product is going to bring to the end consumer is something which people are willing to pay for? So they were very clear that I have to make money because I don't have any other source of money. Nobody is willing to put money on me. So their costing was perfect, their design was perfect. So right from beginning, though they were not able to cover their corporate costs, which was very lean, there were 2 founders alone, they were able to get their profitability right from day zero. And very clear that as I scale, these are the only incremental costs that I have to build. So they had never had doubt saying that will I become profitable at scale. So the thought process that went into building capability was very unique. They're still growing, and we hope couple of, maybe a year later, you will see them becoming a very large, significant player in the space. The second is a healthcare provider who said, okay, as we were discussing, in the so-called, how do I say, urgency to grow. I have to build scale. I have to be 16 cities. I have to be across X number of consumers. I have to offer 25 products. What happened in the process was the amount of money that they spent on getting access to 16 cities, getting access to 3,000 consumers and compromising on the CAC. They built scale, but they continued to bleed. As a result, what has happened is today, neither are they able to scale up further. And today, because after what has happened in the last 2 years, nobody is willing to put money on the table as well because they continue to lose. So I have seen both ends of the spectrum where if you have less money, you tend to be far more efficient, and you know that you don't have any other option. Whereas because of you get caught in that rat race and you want to be with the Jones and you start spending, splurging money, then you don't know how to recover back. And that's the damage with it. You don't know, there's no going back and saying, let's restart. There's no reboot. So I've seen both these cases, and that's what I feel is the learning that we need to avoid.
Thank you for that, Hari. I think the next question to Mr. Kamath should address that also a little bit. So during your tenure at Jyoti Laboratories, you were the driving force in transforming the company from a small private business to a large-scale FMCG corporate. Under your leadership, JLL also had a successful IPO and also diversified into the services sector. Now, while JLL does not specifically categorize as a startup, there's still a significant amount of innovation required to achieve that growth. So what role does innovation play when it comes to achieving both that growth and profitability, especially in the light of, as Hari just mentioned, you can try and do everything, but at what point does that stop?
You need to find definitely the need gap in the consumer first, and detailed study has to be done, and each state is a different country as far as India is concerned. And when you see the success in one product, and like Ujala, when you get 70-80% market share, and that is not that we got it overnight, we took about 10 years to get that market share, then you know that you have salespeople, you have factories, you have distributors, and you have a reach. to a direct reach of 1 million retail outlets. And that is the time you think that what next product we can launch. In India, to succeed, your product should be undoubtedly better. Visibly, it should be better. It should be priced competitively. And it should be different. It cannot be me too product. And in India, the money what we spend on the brand, that's the biggest expenditure. When you spend that, it's like carpet bombing. Your product should be available across 1 million retail outlets. Otherwise, you tend to spend money, and the consumer goes to the shop, and if it's not available, then never ask again. So it's the way how we do is that we can't afford to fail. We do enough study before we launch a product. We do the consumer group discussion. And like startup, nobody chases us. There's no investor to tell us that I need by next Monday or next week and all, not like that. We take our own time. First we launch in Kerala. And if we succeed in Kerala by getting 10% market share, we come to Karnataka and Tamil Nadu together. And if we get 10% in these 3 states, then we go to East. Then only we go all India, because each state is different, and the money what we spend, the biggest expenditure what we do is in branding, and these are all regional channels are available, but once you go to the national channel, your investment will be 4 times more. But the product to get it, the need gap, what I'm saying is that is something you need to work very, very hard. And for which you need to have a good NPD department, you need to have R&D. And I never used to allow any product to go to the market unless I see 50% gross margin. So any product which is great, it comes and stop at that. What is the margin finally I get? Not at a scale. When we launch, we need to get that 50% gross margin. Okay, 49 is okay. 48 is, we can bargain. But if it is less than 45, it won't even come to the market. And that kind of conviction you need to have it. Okay, let's launch a product now at a lesser gross margin. As we go and the consumer start paying more, Indian consumer want free, more extra, 1 + 1, 2 + 1. If you give them 10 free, they said, why not 10 more? So Indian consumer will not pay, and rich will never pay. That's the way how it is. So, and bottom of the pyramid is where it is the business is coming from. Middle of the pyramid is where it's coming from, and top of the pyramid is hardly anything. And we can't go on mass investment to take care of them. There are many D2C companies who will take care of them, charging 1,000 rupees a piece, but we are all at 20, 30, 40 rupees a piece. So to that extent, I'm very clear. Whenever we launch a product, do that homework very clearly. And I only feel sad for our startups that, as Sultan said, that people should not chase them. They should also get weekends. They should also see how the night looks like, how the evening looks like, how the family looks like. And, they should not be made to push to the wall. That is something which is, it should become a norm, like saying that, okay, they are also human beings. And wherever I invested in the startup, I tell them saying that, take care of yourself first. Money comes, money doesn't come, it's okay. But take care of yourself first. Because the day when I see them first, the aura, what you see in them, and 1 year down the line, we need to tell them to go for a haircut. No time for that also. And then you see, these people have gone into that so-called startup. That is something I personally feel that they should take life a little easy. Don't take too much stress on that. Money will always come, money will go, but don't stress yourself. And in India, generally the startup go and get the second or third chance. That again, the investor should see that if somebody has failed twice, he knows how not to fail the third time. So he should be a more potential candidate to invest the money rather than investing in the first timer. So I, for one, I always believe that we should encourage everyone. They have failed. Their idea has failed, but they have not failed. And we should not make their idea and that as a person, we should not club together. So that's my take.
Thank you so much.
Just to add to what Ola said, I think the key is to believe that there is enough time to make your future. I mean, the world will not end tomorrow just because you don't rub yourself today. So take your time to do it right. Rather than do something halfway and then struggle and then try to retrofit and then go back and run around, you're just wasting your energy. The aura is gone. So have the confidence that, the world is there for the next 1,000 years. Nothing is going to happen. And you are going to be the people who are going to drive that future. So take your time, do it correctly for the first time. Maybe not the first time, second time you will definitely do correctly if you're vigilant about what you're doing. So have the patience, and patient capital will follow you. If you're impatient, impatient capital follows you. And that's been the dilemma. That you have investors who have got short-term time frames, and they are trying to meet their objective by pushing you to meet some objective which is not possible on your product space. So that's the conflict. The time frame for the investor and the time frame for the product are not aligned. And therefore you're trying to make, this is a discussion that we had even in healthcare. Typically, a private hospital is not appropriate for private equity very early stages of its life. But then if you try to sort of cohabit both of them, you're killing both. So I think it's important to understand what sort of funding you should source or what sort of a product line that you're trying to build. Have realistic estimates of both. Then you will not have a challenge.
In light of what was just stated, given that you're a long-time entrepreneur, over 20 years in fact, and you've been able to continuously and sustainably scale your startup, how have you seen things like what Hari was saying, pressure from outside market conditions, pressure from investors, and basically even competition, right? Pressure from competition. How have you seen that impact your startup decision-making process? Because I think ultimately it comes down to that, right? If you're under so much pressure, what decisions do you take?
Over the years, a couple of things that I've seen change, and this is something that a lot of us can relate to. One of them is, I think Mr. Kamath, you briefly mentioned about it. It's cool to be an entrepreneur now, right? So it's very cool to be an entrepreneur. And that has its own set of challenges, because in the past it was cool to be an engineer. Like when, in the early 2000s when we were growing up, so you had to be an engineer. So I became an engineer because my mom wanted to be me, right? So that's why I became an engineer. Mm-hmm. And now everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but it's a difficult thing to do. It's very lonely. It's bloody difficult. And I don't know why a lot of them are walking down the path of entrepreneurship when they are not cut out for it. How I wish their friends or maybe their family shows them the mirror and says, dude, you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur, right? And this is something that does not happen, which eventually they face very down the line when they probably have to sit for an investor meeting, or, that's the first time they probably see a mirror. So I think that's one thing that I see change, because not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. And that's a massive change that's happened. So how does that change my business is because out of the 10 people in the past who were walking into my organization for an interview to work for me, there were probably one of them was entrepreneurial. Now the thing is flipped. Now there are 9 of them who want to be entrepreneurs. And I know looking at them that they're not meant to be. So it's changed the psyche. So that's become one of the challenges. The other one that I notice is I don't know why in this world today it's not cool to build a small, boutique, sustainable, profitable business. Because if you look for generations now and for centuries, everyone built that boutique business, right? You have, say, for example, a Bhagat Ram on Commercial Street. Generations of people in Bangalore grew up having the Gulab Jamun from Bhagat Ram. He's a very profitable business. All of us know about him. We vouch for his quality of product. He doesn't have to be an Anand and be in every nook and corner of the country or the city, right? He's happy being there. Now, that kind of an attitude is gone, because anyone who starts a business is always aspiring to be that. So these are 2 massive changes that I see. So people not being happy with building sustainable, profitable boutique businesses. On the other hand, too many people wanting to be entrepreneurs. And how has that impacted change for entrepreneurs like me? We need to be a lot more prudent about who we are hiring, right? And the other thing is, when it comes to meeting investors, I've raised many years ago, and then now again I'm in the process of raising. I think what's changed is somehow, like you said, because I've been around for 20 years, that's not very good in the resume for you to raise investment. You need to be a kid out of college for you to raise, right? So I think those are some of the challenges that you have to navigate, but that's a constant change, and as entrepreneurs, you have to navigate that.
Thank you so much. So just in the interest of time, just want to open questions up to the audience, maybe 1 or 2 at best we can take. So any questions from anyone here today in terms of speaking to Sultan, Mr. Hari, or Mr. Kamath?
Hello. So my question is for Mr. Kamath. So you mentioned that, you operate in a geography and, like after 10%, you go to a next geography, right? So could you share your numbers, like, how these numbers vary, like, like for example, initially, whether it's like at what percentage it is easy to acquire, and after 10%, how difficult it is to acquire. So.
I'll answer one part of that.
Yeah. First, you need to know the category size, and you need to know which category you are addressing and what is the addressable audience, and from there you take the 10%. And place like Kerala, 48,200 retail outlets are there, and Jyoti is not available in 239 retail outlets. Out of 48,200 available retail outlets, we are not available in 239 retail outlets, and our reach is the highest ever. And the better person to reach in Kerala is a postman. Otherwise, we reach everywhere. Now, placing is not a problem for you because you already have access to the shops, right? Second, you have been successful in placing Ujala there across, and everybody, like they're proud of what we have done in Ujala in Kerala. So you get the first placement. There's no value there. It's just that it has got from my factory to the distributor to the retail outlet. From there, it has to go to the consumer, and that's where you spend the money on the brand. And the communication, what we do, we never commit more than what we deliver. Any of our communication, it's always we communicate exactly what is there in the product and no overcommitment there. So they take the product and they come back. 3 times they need to come back. Then we know that the product is doing well. After that, we start spending more. And initially, you get 5-10% market share. 5% you get it anyway because of your placement, because the retail data, what you get from the retailer, the market share. But if you are able to sustain that for about 6 months, 1 year, you know that market is gone. First 10% is very tough. 10 to 20 is very easy. 20 to 30 is very tough because that's where the competitors start, wake up and they say, what is it? And our market is going down. And that's where the war will start. And generally, when the competition war starts, it lasts for 3 years. It's not 90 days. It's 3 years. It keeps working. So it's a very, very systematic science in which you need to work. And once you are there at 10% in Kerala, then you come to Tamil Nadu and Karnataka together. Then you get 10% here. Then you are already for a category size of about 5,000 crore, you are already about 40, 50 crore. And you do have enough gross margin to play with and spend the money on the brand. And very difficult for anybody to catch up. And also, let me tell you that there's nothing called first mover advantage any longer in India. There's no first mover advantage. It's always a last mover advantage which you are getting into now. You take airline industry, you take telecom industry, you take banking industry, you take real estate industry, you take Bhagadram industry, any industry you take. There's nothing called first mover advantage any longer. Please tell that to your investors. Somebody is seeing you, somebody is copying you, and your own employees will be copying you first if you start fighting with them. So you need to be extra careful that I spend less, I earn more, and that should be your moat, and that should be your entry barrier for somebody to come. So you should be extra careful about it. And lastly, your consumer is aging as you age. After 15, 20, 25 years, it will be Anands of the world will be selling the sweets all over the world and not the Bhagatram in Commercial Street after 25 years. Why? Because that consumer has already become 60s and 70s and he's already diabetic. He can only talk about jamun, but he'll never eat jamun. He can be successful entrepreneur, but he cannot be ruling the sweets world all over the world. But if you go to the airport today and see how many bags people are carrying Anand, that's the pride of India. We should appreciate that. Because they have gone much, much, much beyond. And what is the price realization? 1,400 rupees a kilo. Gross margin should be about 70% there, right? Well, out of that, 30% anyway airport will take. but that's the model which I appreciate. How many of us can go to Bhagatram, right? But now Anand is available everywhere for you. And the disruption will be disrupted by disruptors, not by our kind of companies. We don't have the time to disrupt that. The disruption will happen and somebody will disrupt the disruption. That's where all of you are to be very, very careful about. But only good days are ahead. Absolutely no worry. And be an entrepreneur because there's no job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
What I wanted to add was, if you noticed his comments, and I was waiting for his comment to get over, it's all about data. It's all about understanding what's happening on the market and learning from that, rather than sitting in the boardroom and putting Excel sheets and figuring out how to do the next step. So if you heard him, every bit of his answer was all about data and statistics from the ground. And that's how you build large businesses like that.
If I have to put my numbers, I can reference his name, you know. So.
Amazing. 46,800 and 230.
Yeah,
Yeah.
numbers.
I'll give one example. When I was raising the money in Hong Kong, and somebody, they don't know about India, which I understand, and they said that, what do you mean by reach? I told them, those days, fax machine was working, and I told them that you send a piece of paper to any office in India, I'll get it picked up in 30 minutes, because my salesman is there, somewhere around there. And they've sent that fax to their Mumbai office, and within 20 minutes, one of my salesmen took that and sent it back to me, saying that this is the speed in which we operate, and that's it, they invested the money. They invested the money. So reach makes the difference. Reach makes the difference. And lastly, from my side, success should not get into any of your head, and failure should not get into any of your heart. Never, ever do that. Success should not get into the head, and failure should not. And I'll give an example, even though it takes time, but it's very important for you. I had invested in one company, and somebody wanted to acquire that company. And these poor fellows came to me saying that, sir, you are invested, and somebody wants to acquire this, and how do we go about it? I said, it's your call. You want to become an employee of that company, you go ahead. But I don't want to come along with you people. So the other person called me to one big hotel, and regular jeans and a round color T-shirt, and half an hour
White
late,
sneakers.
and coming straight, and ordering for a black coffee, and we are all decoction coffee. And he just came and he said that, oh, thank you very much for supporting these kids, and we just want to acquire them. What do you say about it? I said, nothing, I've come here. If you want to take them, you take them. But we have decided to take you also along. So you have an option. If you want cash, it is, suppose it's 100. If you want our stock, we'll give you 80. I said, how the difference is? He said, no, because we multiply 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times and all those things. I said, no, I don't understand that. Whatever I had to get, please give me that. I'm happy. Oh, when do you want it? I said, anytime. Okay, you'll have the money tomorrow morning in your bank account. Please give me your bank details. And while I was going back, I called up my friend and said that this company will not go for too long. Too far, this company will not go. And I told my other people who were supposed to get the shares from that company, I told them that, please take the cash and work with me. I'll give you the salary. This company will not go. No, sir, no, sir, no, sir. 3 years, we'll do this. Out of the two, one took the cash, other person stayed, and that company became big zero thereafter. It was all economic times. But I'm saying that I could see that the way how we came, the way how we sat, how we placed the order for black coffee while talking. He don't wait till the person comes and asks what do you want. He only tells, one black coffee, please. That means the regular guest there. And I knew that little bit of arrogance on success and the money in the bank. And next day morning, my bank account, I got a text message, money has come. Documentation happened later. So that story is not something which I request all the startup not to have that kind of a thing. Be ordinary human beings. That carries a lot of value.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope everyone here learned a lot. I'm sure that I did. Thank you so much for joining us and spending your evening.
Thank you to our panel members. This has been a truly insightful session for all of us present here. Next, we have the privilege of engaging in a fireside chat between Ganesh Raju, founder of TurboStart, in conversation with Rohit Bansal, the co-founder of Ace Vector Group, which includes the e-commerce platform Snapdeal, retail SaaS platform Unicommerce, and house of brands Stilero. Rohit is also the co-founder of Titan Capital, one of India's leading early stage technology investors. Titan Capital is an early investor in many businesses, including Ola Cabs, Urban Company, Shadowbox, Razorpay, and among others. As chair of FICCI's Startup Committee for 2023, Rohit is focused on creating a greater connect between India's startups and large established businesses. Rohit will shed light on funding the future, insights into the evolving landscape. We will gain a deeper understanding of the trends, opportunities, and challenges in securing funding for startups and how the landscape has evolved over time.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Rohit, first of all, thanks for coming. I know how difficult it is to come from all the way from Delhi and the traffic in Bangalore. So thanks once again for being here with us.
No, the pleasure is all mine, and I think Bangalore is the hub for startups. So anyone not coming to Bangalore is missing out on.
No, we wish we have you more often in Bangalore. I think the kind of stuff that he has done definitely should have you more often in Bangalore. So, given the audience today, I know for a fact that you have run successfully large businesses, but that's not the focus because it's more, I'm sure most of the audience here want to know about investments or how to go about raising funds, notwithstanding the discussion we had the last panel. So, as you know, Rohit has actually backed more than 200 companies out of Titan Capital. Of course, he started off, I'm assuming, as an angel investor and formed Titan Capital eventually. I don't know how many of you have read about it. It's just mind-blowing. I mean, at least assuming that after seeing him as one of the speakers, you would have done some homework. I just look at the list and I just can't imagine how successfully you have done that. So why don't you just give us a journey about Titan Capital? I mean, what led to formation of Titan Capital? Given that already you're successfully running large businesses, what led to the formation of Titan Capital?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank everyone here for being here. It's a pleasure. And Ganesh, thanks for inviting me. As I mentioned, it's always a pleasure to come to Bangalore. Bangalore is where all the action is happening, both on technology, startups, etc. And the weather's perfect too. So,
Yeah.
so
it's not so great right now as we speak, but yeah, another month's time it should get a lot better.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure for me to come here. About Titan Capital, we started all the way back in 2011 or so. And I remember, when we were coming out of college, we started our business in 2007. At that point of time, as some of the earlier panelists were also mentioning, entrepreneurship was not cool. I think most of the people used to think that iski job nahi lagi hogi, so he's becoming an entrepreneur. So that's how people used to think about entrepreneurship back then. And there was very little ecosystem, very few companies had sort of broken out from India, etc. And as a result, when we had started our business, both me and Kunal, we were both very, very passionate about entrepreneurship, which we still are. And we strongly believe that entrepreneurs are going to create the future of any country as well as the world. And I think it was this inherent passion about entrepreneurship in us that when entrepreneurs used to reach out to us for some gyan, mentorship, advice, etc., we just love to interact with entrepreneurs. And just as a way to stay more engaged, we started investing in some of them, more as a hobby because people used to reach out to us. As luck would have it, amongst the first 2-3, I think first was Ola in their seed round. The second or third turned out to be Urban Company, etc. And I think somehow over the next 2-3 years, as we started doing this as a hobby, we started realizing that some combination of judgment and hard work of entrepreneurs seems to be working here. And maybe we should take it a little more seriously than we are. And right now we are only doing it really, really sporadically. So we started doing it a little more seriously. We started saying yes to a lot because we used to get a lot more meetings. We started spending a little more time than we used to earlier and started doing it a little more systematically, which eventually, I think we started investing in companies in 2011, and Titan Capital formed somewhere in 2016 or 17, so 5-6 years later. Till that time, we had invested in a few companies, but then we started doing it a little more systematically, built also a small team around it so that we can focus and also provide a lot of the common learnings that we've seen work across all these companies, and also the common mistakes we've seen which to avoid. And that's how eventually Titan Capital formed. But it inherently comes out of a lot of passion for entrepreneurship for myself, Kunal, and as well as our team.
No, that's very evident. And also, if you see the companies that you have backed, it looks like even they also believe in the same philosophy, right? Just, I mean, it's almost category defining companies. If you have taken a look at the list of right from Razorpay to Ola to Urban Company, as I mentioned, Mama Earth, and the list goes on, and it's just incredible. So while deciding to invest, and I'm sure you would have had the same patterns, I would say Ola would have started around 2012.
2011 or 12. I remember when we invested in Ola, they were doing about 5 rides a day. And there was no app also. They used to take bookings on the phone.
I regret the decision even today. It should be around that time because I remember when I was in PwC, a partner there, Bhavesh Agrawal actually came to our office with a backpack. He was just moving from Bombay to Bangalore.
Yeah.
And he was finding an office in HSR layout like the way most of the entrepreneurs here do. So I think incredibly you had some kind of, an instinct or some science to the way you invest, right? Otherwise it's impossible to have chosen such companies, right? And so many. And out of 200, I look at the list, at least 80, 90 prominent companies, you can just know the names, right? They've created a brand. What does it go into deciding what kind of companies to invest and how?
So first of all, I think the skill of any investor is really hard to tell. And we still very strongly believe that, any company to become successful definitely requires a lot of hard work by the entrepreneur who are doing most of the work, and some combination of good judgment and good luck by the person who's backing the entrepreneur. We actually still don't know how much is good judgment and how much is good luck. Till now, we've been very fortunate with that. But a few of the things we've seen over and over again, Ganesh, to answer your question on what works, is one, needless to say, it needs to be an incredible team, which brings to the table a great combination of both confidence as well as humility and ability to learn. We've seen that, many times star entrepreneurs, after they become successful, they get defined that, they would have been this very A-type, very aggressive, very confident from day one. But we've actually seen a combination of the two work much better, where they are very confident because they've done their research, talked to a lot of customers before building the product, etc. But have that little bit of humility and willingness to learn, because needless to say, we've seen over and over and over again, every single company, because we invest in companies when there is many times not even a presentation, let alone a product. And over and over and over again, while from the outside in, it seems like it's a straight line journey. The company started doing really well and grew to this large transaction volume, large funding rounds, etc. But invariably, every single company we've seen, including the ones that you mentioned, have gone through tremendous number of mistakes in their early stages. And many of them have actually changed model 2 to 3 times before they eventually ended up doing what they're doing today. But the ability to change models and learn from all these mistakes only comes when you have the humility to learn. That when you have the humility to talk to your customers, to talk to other people in the industry, and then incorporate that feedback, and sometimes know that I don't have all the answers and I won't be right all the time. But if I talk to 100 people and 80 people are telling me I'm wrong, maybe I should seriously reconsider my decisions. So that's one criteria we've seen work over and over again. Number 2 is addressing a large market, because we feel that being a part of a market which is very large allows you to make a lot more mistakes versus working in a niche market. There's nothing wrong with niche markets, by the way. It's, I think, as one of the panelists had mentioned, there is absolutely nothing wrong with building a business in a small market where you have dominant market share. But again, we have to put the lens of an investor on. that as an investor to generate a meaningful return, the business has to become very large. And as a result, it's important for us as an investor to see that the business is addressing a very large market. Only then can we generate a meaningful return. Otherwise, it can be a great business, but not necessarily an investor-friendly business, if I may. That's number two. And I think number three is just the product has to be offering a great experience to end consumers. These are the 2-3 things that we've seen amongst many others, but as early traits of what contributes to a sort of good business.
Well, it makes sense. I think to summarize, it's all about founders' quality, right? And of course, market is important from an investor's perspective, but primarily it's about the founders. Confidence, but as much as confidence they possess, they should also be at least somewhat humble to learn, right? It's very, very important. And we are learning the journey ourselves, Rohit. We have been for 4 years and not as strong as what you have become, but we are learning in the journey that it's all about founders. Everything else we can address, but if it's not founders, then nothing is there, right? It's very, very difficult.
Absolutely. And look, I think that's where our own experiences as entrepreneurs come in very handy, because we've been in those, and that's the reason why many of the entrepreneurs want to work with us as well, because they know that we ourselves have been in many of these situations which they are finding themselves in, where I think some people mentioned that there's obviously the more your business grows, the more voices you find around the table. There are different investors who some came in early stage, some came in later stage. They all will come with their own agendas in mind, which may not be ill-meaning, but just it may be different from what yours is, and your team members may have a different agenda. And as a result, it becomes the founder's responsibility to take all these inputs, but eventually the decision of what to do has to be taken by the founder, because that, I don't think as much as everyone else can take credit when things work out, if things don't work out, we've seen over and over again, the blame only goes to the entrepreneur.
Of course.
And as a result, the entrepreneur always has to have the last word on what is the final decision.
That's what Sultan was mentioning, right? It's a very, very lonely battle. If you're not cut out for that, you should definitely not get into it for sure, because it's tough, right? The next question is more relevant for you folks here. Given the slowdown, personally, do you still continue to invest the same way that you did in the past? That's question one. What should be all the entrepreneurs be doing to increase the chances of raising funds? I don't know whether you'll be really end up raising funds or not, at least the possibility of at least increasing your chance of raising funds. And personally, from your side, do you continue the same momentum, or you taken a step back? I mean, how do you see as an investor?
Actually, I have a very contrarian view on that, as that I very strongly feel, first of all, we continue to invest, if possible, even more aggressively than when the slowdown was not there. And we are seeing, the number of companies which are starting up has probably reduced a little bit as compared to the last couple of years, but the quality is dramatically better, like remarkably better. Because I think today every entrepreneur knows that there is a slowdown in the market. Fundraising is not as easy as it was for the last couple of years, and still they feel compelled to start a business. So they need to have extremely strong conviction in what they're trying to do if anyone is starting a business in today's day and age, and people are spending, as a result, a lot more time thinking through their ideas, researching their ideas, and only starting up when they feel fully convinced that, even if there's a slowdown, I want to start at this point of time. Which is why we are seeing the quality of teams, quality of ideas have become much better than it was till maybe last couple of years. So we continue to be very, very bullish. And I think Mr. Kamath as well mentioned that look, the future is going to get built by entrepreneurs. There is going to be disruption and innovation, which is going to continue to happen till eternity. And there is not a single sector where we don't see entrepreneurship, coming in. In fact, one of the big changes we've seen is that, around a decade or so back, like this tech entrepreneurship used to be still very limited to a few industries, and hence startup was an industry in itself. Today it's different. Today there's a startup in every industry. You take every sector that is possible, which is as old school as it gets, whether it's manufacturing, logistics, agriculture, healthcare. There are new companies coming up in each of those domains. And I think as a result, they're addressing sort of continuously larger and larger and larger markets. And the scope of entrepreneurship is becoming even bigger in the country. So we are pretty excited about what's going on.
So you guys know whom to send the mail to. Not to him personally, but in the website there is specific mail. Please go and send the mail and try your luck. It's very important. But I think what I have seen is, it's more about not validation. It's like what Sultan was saying, right? It's not about your own conviction as an entrepreneur. But if some investors back you, there is a conviction in what you do, right? I mean, that's very important. The smart money versus
I think you also asked one more question, Ganesh, that what can entrepreneurs do to increase their likelihood of fundraising? Amongst the many other things, one thing which we've seen all entrepreneurs, which we advise sort of commonly to all entrepreneurs as well, is that don't wait for investors to validate your idea. That, I'm thinking of ABC, but if some investor gives me money, then I will start. I don't think that is the right way to think about starting a business. I feel the right way of starting a business is, I am very compelled by this idea. I am willing to do this nonetheless. As in the process of starting to build my business, I will talk to a lot of investors. People may show interest right now, or people may not, and people may want to wait and see a little more traction. But I'm going down this path nonetheless. As an investor, that's the level of conviction that investors like to see in entrepreneurs, and not entrepreneurs who are seeking permission of investors to start a business. That is not the right DNA for an entrepreneur.
So that's a very good point, but I think hopefully most of them here are already running business, and they're looking for money to scale, particularly this crowd. So that leads to my next question. So in the last panel, you heard the debate between growth, profitability, and scale. You have been an entrepreneur as well as a prolific investor. What is your take on this? Generically, not maybe sector-wise, they all went into depth. It's always interesting to listen to Mr. Kamath and Hari and Sultan. Fantastic, but what's your take on this?
I don't think this is a topic which is even open for debate. I think look, at the end of the day, as I think the panelists also very articulately mentioned, the purpose of any business is to generate money. There are no, it's like the rule of gravity. The law of gravity is the same for every business on the planet, that eventually a business has to be generating money. So I don't think there is ever or should ever be a question on whether we should make profits or grow. I don't think there is an option but to make profits. That's very clear. I actually feel this seasonality, sometimes growth is in vogue, sometimes profitability is in vogue, is just the change of seasons which keeps happening. True businesses, we feel, need to be evergreen, and as a result, embrace both growth and profitability perpetually into their business, and almost try and distance themselves from the season end fad, because that's how you build evergreen businesses, right? Because we've seen now enough cycles. We've seen these cycles change every 2 to 3 years. For 2 years, there'll be a cycle of growth that grow. Then for another 2 years, there'll be a cycle of profitability. Then another 2 years, there'll be a cycle of growth. But look, building a business is a multi-decade journey. Any business that gets meaningfully built takes many years and even decades to build. And as a result, no business operates that, okay, for 2 years I'll focus on profits, then I'll 2 years focus on growth, then I'll focus on profits, then I'll focus on growth. I think the way the journey needs to, at least we've seen play out amongst early stage companies especially, is the first few years or first few months or whatever amount of time it takes are best spent in determining product market fit for a business, which means figuring out who our customer is, figuring out what our offering to that customer is, then figuring out our customer. One of the common mistakes people make is never talk to a customer and build a product in isolation. But at the end of the day, the customer has to pay money for the product. And as a result, finding out whether our customers are willing to pay for our product or not. And more equally importantly, actually, I don't think product market fit does justice to what needs to happen. We believe in product market economic fit, which means that not only is the customer willing to pay something for this product, is the customer willing to allow me to make money while selling this product or not? I feel the first that we've seen across many of these companies, successful ones, the first few months or quarters or years, whatever time it takes, should go into perfecting this formula as to what product do I have, are my customers willing to buy the product, and are my customers willing to allow me to make money while selling this product. Till that time, it is best to keep the costs really, really, really low, because the lower you keep your costs, the longer you can run and sustain yourself, and the more cycles of iteration you can have on your product till the time you discover what finally my customers are willing to buy. It's only post that one should start. Now that you've created the product, then the product has a certain level of economics. Some products have 90% gross margin, some products have obviously negative gross margins out of the picture, because then that's even worse than a charitable business that you're never going to make money. But then once you determine what are the economics of a business, what is my gross margin, as a result, you know how much money will I make when I sell this product. That sort of determines how much you can afford to spend to acquire a customer, because customer acquisition is not a cost in isolation. If you make 10 rupees in selling the product, that is the maximum amount of money you have available to acquire a customer. If you make 1 lakh rupees selling a product, that is the amount of money you have available to acquire a customer. And as a result, it's less about how fast you should grow. It's more about how fast does your economics afford you to grow. And that's this level of growth. Now, whether that growth is 10% a year, 30% a year, 100% a year, I've rarely seen more than 200% a year growth, while there's a lot of chatter about 10x growth, etc. But the growth of a business strongly gets determined by what your margins afford you to or allow you to do, rather than in isolation.
Absolutely. I think maybe 2021 changed, or maybe caused all this debate, right?
Yeah.
That 1 year of aberration just changed the whole perception. Otherwise, this was never a question otherwise. So one interesting thing, I know the next panel is on generative AI, and I'm mindful of time also. Will not make all of you sit for long, because I know you have to maybe meet some people. But the reason that I want to at least ask one question on that is primarily because he was in the room with Sam Altman in Delhi. And the very unique crowd was present there personally. And a lot of interesting insights from Sam, obviously, and it's all over the media. So one of the important question which the next panel is going to address more in detail is whether this generative AI is really a bubble, again what we've seen in cryptocurrency or equivalent of that, or it's real.
Yeah.
And as Sam Altman says, whether it is overhyped in the short run, maybe in the long run it is underhyped, which means that there's a great opportunity in the future. So I don't know what the answer is, but what is your perspective, given that you've been close to them, and I'm assuming a lot of companies in your portfolio also are working on that. So what is your...
But actually, I don't think it can be better articulated than what Sam mentioned. On this point, I completely agree with it. Is generative AI going to stay here? 100% sure. Is it going to change many of the things we do and the way we do things? 100% sure. But at the same time, is there too much hype in the short run? That is also true. That I think just the social media, it seems 50-60% of the chatter is only about AI. While I think there's still applications being built and they will take time to build. Over a period of time, in every single field, I think AI will be very useful, materially change the way we do things, materially change what machines do and what humans do. But I think in the near term, there's too much hype without necessarily having created enough substance in terms of the actual ways in which generative AI is changing processes. So I think it's taken the world by a storm, because I don't think when ChatGPT came out, anyone was really expecting something like this to come out into the open. And as a result, there's a lot of excitement around it, which is justified. But like with anything else, we need to take it with patience, with caution, over a period of time, figure out what are the practical use cases of generative AI, and systematically build businesses, versus all of us getting into generative AI and assuming that within 6 months everything in the world is going to be different. So I'm, over a longer period of time, very, very optimistic about it.
So maybe most of you should think and then do things, then jumping and then put AI next to your startups. So I have a lot of questions for him, but obviously I want it to be more relevant for you guys. I don't want to be asking the same questions which I thought is relevant and may not be for you guys. Any questions for Rohit? Obviously all of us are delighted that he's here today with his experience as an entrepreneur as well as successfully funded so many companies. Any questions from the audience? So long as it's not directly asking whether you invest or not, but any other questions, any other questions are welcome. All of you are shy.
Either it is too clarifying or too boring.
As I can see, a lot of people are raised.
One question is, it's profitability and growth is something which is not a dilemma. But why do we keep seeing businesses who are after growth?
Sorry, can you repeat?
I mean, why do businesses, I mean, every time we see in the news, it is everybody is after growth. So, I mean, everybody advises growth and profitability, but what is that we are missing? What is that?
No, I think, look, first of all, why is everyone after growth? Because they should be, because the purpose of a business is to exist. I'll come to that as well. So, at the end of the day, every business eventually exists to generate profits, and to generate returns, the business has to continue growing over a period of time. The reason I personally feel why this debate keeps occurring over and over and over again in cycles is sometimes people go into this hyper growth without profitability, and then again things sort of come to a correction, is, as some of the earlier panelists also mentioned, is somehow the inherent impatience sometimes creeps in. That I want to sort of be a $500 million company within a year, or I want to build a unicorn within 2 years. I think it's that short-term impatience which tends to lead companies and people and investors and the environment to do things which are not natural. An unnatural thing always comes with tremendous amount of cost. We've seen over a period of time that if one is a little more impatient long-term, but patient short-term, the same journey, like instead of trying to grow 300% every year, we've seen most of those journeys, after growing 300% for a year or two, always result in a sharp correction of degrowing by 50% the year after. Whereas if the same business with the right economics can afford to grow at 50% a year, 70% a year, which is, by the way, ridiculously high growth rate also. But if the business chose to not grow at 300% a year because they can't afford to, and they can only afford to grow at 50% a year, and did that for a 4-year period, eventually they will end up being in a far better place over the next 4 years versus trying to do this 300% for 2-3 years and then having a sharp correction. So I actually feel it's a lot to do with sort of the short-term impatience, which should probably be traded with long-term impatience and not short-term impatience.
Any other? I think Srikanth, you had a question. Bharat.
You have invested in a lot of these enterprises spanning across domains. Where do you think the future disruption should happen? And you have invested in a lot of these startups spanning healthcare or FMCG or products like that. Which industry do you think needs the most disruption to happen or improvements?
I actually don't think it is, I mean, it's a great question, but I actually think almost every industry is ripe for disruption. Even in an as traditional as industry as personal care products, etc. Over the last 5 years, we've seen fantastic companies and D2C brands come up, which are offering consumers something different as compared to what they're getting till now. And that is, by the way, an industry which people thought has existed since forever, and as a result is indisruptible. I actually feel every industry is ripe for disruption because consumers are always wanting more products, better quality, more nuanced products, etc. So actually, I don't think it's going to be limited to 1 or 2 sectors. I think it's going to happen in every sector, whether it's new age or old age.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask, why is Titan more focused on very early stage startups and not later stage startups?
Actually, as some of the panelists mentioned, we practice what we preach. We preach strong focus on figuring out what you are good at and then trying to build expertise in that and sticking to that so that you excel at doing that. It's exactly the same philosophy which is making us focus on seed investing, because we've done that over a period of time now. We feel we built some expertise in understanding businesses, guiding entrepreneurs at the very early stages of inception, and as a result we continue to focus on that. Honestly, if we start doing Series C, Series D growth investing, when we invest $50, $100 million into a company, we may ourselves not fully understand how to do that, because that is not our area of expertise. And we are sure there are many other people who are able to do a much better job than us. So we, as a result, continue to stick to our focus area and continue to sharpen and deepen our expertise in that.
Thank you. Bharat, after that, Mohan, it will come to you.
Yeah, so what is the current industry, Indian VC house are looking, the ChatGPT with the AI? I mean, what is it exciting for current VC companies in India? At least are you looking at AI-based companies and things like that, or probably give us at least the last 3 months of what are the companies that you're looking to invest?
Sure. No, we are looking across spaces. We are seeing a lot of innovation happen in the B2B space across industries. In the AI space also, there's a lot of activity happening. Specifically because your question was with respect to AI, the most prominent use case we are starting to see come up practically over the last few months are, one is in content generation, obviously, because that's what ChatGPT is. And number two is in your software development, where AI has actually found a very unique use case where it's accelerating software development for developers and developer productivity by multifold. So we are seeing that space also being very interesting over the last few months.
Hope you got the answer, Bharat. Okay, to one maybe last question, because the panel is waiting, but after Shiv, maybe Mohan, and then we will...
Maybe it's a stupid question. We heard about the discussion on profitability and growth and all that, fine. The question is, why does money keep chasing businesses which lose money? Why?
It's not happening anymore, though.
Big money chase big losses, no?
Actually, if you don't have big losses, you don't need big money. so big money will always chase big losses only. So, no, but I don't know the answer to that. We are very, very early stage investors. Compared to that, we write very small checks. So, I personally think sort of this cycle keeps going up and down. I myself don't fully understand why that happens, but we've seen that practically it tends to happen every few years. We don't subscribe to that philosophy as a fund as well as personally, because we believe that building long-term value in any business requires staying at it for a long period of time, and staying at it for a long period of time requires trying to build sustainable practices from very, very early on. We've rarely seen a business which started with 20% gross margin and somehow magically thought that at scale my margins will become 50%. It just doesn't happen. If it's 20%, it can probably be optimized to 23, 24, 25, etc. But we've seen a business, even at adulthood, will have very similar gross margins to what it had in childhood. I don't think, imagining a future that somehow growth will solve all problems or scale will all solve problems, we actually don't subscribe to that school of thought, which is why I mentioned what I mentioned, that product, market, economics fit in our view. All three have to be figured out from very early stages of inception of a business. Over a period of time, they can be tweaked and fine-tuned and tinkered with a little bit, but we don't believe that you can go from a 20% gross margin business to a 60% gross margin just because you have scale now. And as a result, it's important to have those sustainable economic practices from very early on.
Thanks, Rohit. Last question, one question from Mohan. You need the mic? Okay. Okay, but it's the second last question, and then Mohan will stop because I can see all of them restless there.
So I have a question specific to SaaS. Now, there's a dilemma that, so I'm a SaaS founder, a bunch of others are facing as well right now, which is like if you raise a seed of around 2-3 million, right? It's not really valued by any ARR multiple or any other common practice. But then when you're going to raise a Series A, those are being valued at multiples now. So you're sort of in that graveyard where there's not much value appreciation happening from a seed to Series A, and the milestones are still the same aggressive, right? So how do you think about planning a seed raise or like a Series A raise? Like this is like from your investor hat, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very good question, by the way. And what you're saying is absolutely right. Till the time you have any revenue or any product, effectively speaking, the money you're raising is to fund your cost of development of the product. I personally think $2-3 million is very high for funding the development of any product, but let's leave that out to whoever is investing. But eventually, I think that's the reality of life, that eventually once you do have revenue, I don't think it's fair to value value a company only on that particular month's or quarter's revenue, but maybe a slightly 1 year long projection. But that is going to be the reality of life. Now, sometimes it can put entrepreneurs in a situation where because of good market, they manage to raise money at, I don't know, $15 million valuation even before they had a product. And now they have a product where they are generating some revenue, but the company is still getting valued at $15 million, even after perceivably having made a lot of progress. But look, as an entrepreneur, I can say, if your money is running out, your business is starting to work, it is completely okay to take that one on the chin. There are no prizes that every round the valuation has to go up. If your business needs money, your business is doing well, and having a flat round will continue to sustain you and give you the firepower to build the business and grow revenue, there is absolutely no shame in having a flat round, because it is always materially better than running out of money and shutting the business, because then it is game over. After that is done, then you can't do anything. Flat round, maybe it feels bad to the ego for a little bit that, we spent a year and a half building all these things and we're still getting valued at the same price that we got valued at a year and a half back. I actually feel swallowing one's ego is a part and parcel of an entrepreneur journey, and one should happily swallow that for the long-term success of the business.
Thanks. Mohan, your last question. Hope you got your mic. Nobody has given you mic. Okay. Easy questions takes long time to answer.
So you were an entrepreneur and an investor. Which one did you enjoy most? And if you had more time, where would you put in?
Unfortunately, everyone in the world has 24 hours a day, and so do I. But actually, it's very hard to decide. I think both are exciting for different reasons. I feel entrepreneurship gives one the kick of creation, creation where nothing existed and you're suddenly creating something out of thin air, and that kick is very hard to replace. But at the same time, as an investor, you get the joy of being a part of so many more ideas and so many more journeys. Not in the same way as you are as an entrepreneur, but you actually get to live the life of many ideas, which is exciting in its own right. So it's a very hard one to pick, to be completely honest, which is why I choose to do both.
Thank you.
I don't know if you would have become an investor if not for the entrepreneurship. Okay, then thanks Rohit again, once again. It's fantastic. As you see, the engagement is very high, and really, and as I said earlier, we would look forward to having you more often in Bangalore, and I think definitely the insights will help everyone. So another just 20 minutes. I think it's a very interesting thing about generative AI, because we have one of the founder here from generative AI companies, which was just launched last week in Product Hunt. And hopefully it has been trending #1 in Product Hunt, and likely to be #1 product for a month, which means very few companies like Figma and others have had the feed, so he's going to share his experience. Exactly. Yeah, ChatGPT is one of the things which trended for a month, and it happened to be one of our portfolio companies, so Ram is here. So 20 minutes, just move around, so we'll finish it fast, and then we can network for some time. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for having me, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bansal. This has been a snippet into the future. Finally, our third panel will take a topic of immense significance: generative AI investments, lucrative opportunity or emerging bubble. AI is transforming industries at an unprecedented pace, and generative AI is currently as talked about as crypto during its heyday. Today's panelists are experts on deep tech and will share their thoughts on whether it is a boom or a bubble. We have with us Mr. Avnish Stabarwal, Managing Director, Accenture Ventures and Open Innovation. Avnish has been instrumental in opening up the startup collaboration between India and Israel, and is regarded as an expert on the deep tech startup ecosystem across both countries. Avnish is an ardent technology evangelist with more than 25 years of extensive experience in innovation, digital transformation, corporate strategy, and leadership development. Mr. Ram Ganeshan is our second panelist, founder and CEO of Civi.ai, a generative graphic design organization. With over 14 years of building products that solve real-life problems through a combination of design and engineering, Ram is on a mission to create a positive influence on the future of design, powered by artificial intelligence. Ram also co-founded startups like Choice.ai and MindWatt Analytics. Our third panelist is Mr. Venkat Raju, Global CEO TurboStart. Venkat is a highly accomplished serial entrepreneur with successful exits in Silicon Valley and India. Venkat's impressive career includes leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies that has given him extensive experience in global organizations driving innovation and digital transformation. He has been a technology evangelist, vibrantly active in startup-led digital transformation and innovation ecosystems in the US and India. The panel will now be moderated by Ms. Simran Mohapatra, co-founder Canvas.
So good evening, everyone present here. I hope I'm audible to everyone back there. So let's kickstart today's discussion with a topic that's been going around, and it's been in the spotlight in recent times. Generative AI, or Gen AI, is the buzzword of the year, particularly with the rise of transformative technologies like ChatGPT, Jasper, Bard, and so many others. And with the increasing adoption of these technologies, it's no surprise that this sector has been receiving a tremendous amount of attention and attracting a lot of excitement lately. However, with any groundbreaking technology that comes out, we see a lot of hype accompany it. And that brings to our question today. Do we see a bubble forming? Is this burgeoning field of generative AI investments on the verge of a bubble? And I'd like to open this question to our panelists here. So Avnish, we'll start with you. So with your extensive experience at Accenture, you would have been exposed to this rapidly evolving field of Gen AI. And based on your observations, what is your take on this? Do you see a bubble coming up when it comes to Gen AI investments?
Well, I think if you compare it with the late 1990s dot-com bubble burst, there are obviously some similarities. So yes, I think some people do think that there is a bubble which is going to burst. But if you look at the companies which got formed during that time, whether it's a Google, Amazon, they were the ones who were able to bring and build transformational businesses. And while a number of other ones, had finished during that burst of the bubble. So it's not going to be very different in this case as well. There will be a lot of Me Too companies and startups which will emerge. and a lot of money will be put into that, unfortunately. But some of them will come up and probably will be the future Amazons and Googles in the next few years. So I think from a Gen AI perspective, the fact that it is one of the biggest invention ever, there is no doubt about that. So I think from that perspective, there is no debate as far as I am concerned, or if anybody else is concerned. But the returns are not going to be one, evenly distributed, and secondly in the short term. Even if you look at Altman and you asked him the question that where is the money going to come from, he said that he doesn't know. He built it, and then he's hoping that the monetization will happen. So I think that would be my answer. That yes, I think after the after what has happened with Web3, metaverse, and blockchain, people were pessimistic and wanted to have a new star amongst them, and I think Gen AI is coming like that bright shining star, which and a new toy which everybody wants to have. So I think it's a mixed thing. The bubble is going to burst, I don't think so, but it is not going to give you an ROI and monetization in the short term.
Thanks for that, Avnish. Now I'd like to move on to Venkat. Your passion for this field has been quite evident to us. And based on your experiences and journey as an investor, what's your take on this?
I see a gold rush. So in a gold rush, there are going to be blood. I happened to be in Silicon Valley during the time he was talking about, and it was blood flowing down. Investors had lost their shirts. Hundreds of startups had failed. And to his point, it was also the same time when value creation happened, Google and Amazon, etc. So I expect the same thing happening. Unfortunately, during this, it is going to be a bubble. It's going to burst, but it's going to launch a whole generation of fantastic corporations with very, very long value creation down the years. So both are going to be true. And the question is, as an investor, am I going to be betting on the right companies? And as startups and founders, don't jump into this crazy thing just because it is cool to be a Gen AI company, but you better have the right insights, and the market opportunity you're going after is something that you can do successfully is when you jump, and that's going to differentiate between the successful ones and a lot of failures. I see both.
Thank you for that, Venkat.
So I have a perspective that it's more like a mobile industry, mobile innovation cycle, so that it's not a bubble according to me. And I feel that it's more like an interface, right? So all the businesses have our own core value. Let's say, for example, if you're running an e-commerce, your core value is logistics. So this is just going to be an interface for you. It's something like what mobile did for the industry. The same thing, AI would be an interface where people will be able to interact with your product easily using chat and so on. So I have a feeling that there is two kind of companies. One is a core Gen AI companies, and number two, feature as a Gen AI as a feature. So I feel like there is a hype. I'm not sure that's called bubble. I feel like it's a hype is different from bubble. I don't know like how much of investment has already gone into the AI. I feel it's not as much as it's happened on the .com or anything. So overall, I feel that it's not going to be a bubble, and it's going to be more like a interface, and people are going to benefit, and companies are going to benefit.
Thank you for that. So we all know that this technology has been quite disruptive and transformative, and it's going to have an exponential potential to shape our future. But I'd like to address the application-led companies that are coming up right now and their ability to really exploit this technology effectively. So my next question is for all of the panelists over here. So do you think that the current hype around Gen AI is being channeled towards the right categories and appropriate use cases? In other words, do you think startups are really building the right applications and looking at the right problems to solve? Yeah,
Me?
sweet.
Maybe
Yes.
I can start.
Okay.
So I think, Accenture has just published a report where we have identified 300 use cases across 19 industries. From a use case perspective, if you look at the 4-5 areas where we think the massive adoption of Gen AI will be, the first is what we call advice. So this will be like a co-pilot. Each one of us will have it's more of a B2C kind of an application, right? So that's one, advice. Second will be create, which is going to talk about, design. It's going to look at market research. The third is what we call automate. So it's going to automate business processes with hyper efficiency. Fourth is going to be around code. So this is about writing and correcting code. And the fifth is going to be about protection. This is about responsible AI. So we feel that from a horizontal perspective, the key use cases are going to come across these 5 areas. But then large language models and foundational models will start getting verticalized as well, where you're going to use these big models and then put an application layer on top of it. And that is where we will find significant use cases, for example, for healthcare or retail or education, which will come out. So from our perspective, this is how we see the whole use case scenario.
Thank you, Avnish. Maybe Ram.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there is difference between a foundational model and I want to simplify this for all the startups. It's much easier to integrate AI today than before because it's already democratized and we'll be able to easily integrate into our application. And if you really see the recent release from Google, they have actually divided that into many sizes, right? So that's a very important step in doing that is because every application is unique and your data is everything. That's your moat. So if you are able to retrain those models, you will be able to excel in whatever you're doing today with a 10x multiplier factor with those models. So that's exactly what all startups have to do. And we should stop hyping ChatGPT. We should stop using the word, I would say. And we should start looking at it as a medium to use for your product to amplify your growth. So I feel that disruption and business principles still stays the same and nothing has changed. And it's just the same business principles. And we just need to take and make use of this trend and integrate such things into our applications and make it available for our users. We are just simplifying it.
Interesting. Thanks, Ram. Thank you.
I would like to take a step back, and again, to my point earlier, one has to know where your USP, your differentiation, and how you can compete effectively. If you look at the entire stack, all the way from the infrastructure, let's say the hardware, the GPU, TPU, to the cloud, and then the foundational models, whether open source diffusion or closed like OpenAI, and then comes the application layer. And even there, it's like you want it to be a Jasper or a GitHub Copilot and so on. You have to see, and from my perspective, for the vast majority of startups, especially those in India, the bottom layers are something may not be really feasible because the kind of capital and the resources required will be stunning. So you may want to play in the land, and if you're an entrepreneur in India, looking at creating something here for the global market, the proven model is SaaS. So if SaaS is a proven model, to Ram's point, is there a way you can embed into, let's say, a vertical SaaS offering, if you will, and go specifically into that deeper? Because there is no way you're going to be competing with the LLMs and other things. But is there, in a vertical scenario, I would use the word SLM, small LM, very focused in that vertical thing, and go for it, I think there is an opportunity. But if you are an entrepreneur in India, primarily looking at the India market, and it's a very, very large market, rather than complaining, oh, all the LLMs are biased towards English or Chinese because that's where everything is going on, I think we have a large vernacular population here, and there are opportunities in India where, for example, how many of them can literally understand Ayurveda written in perhaps Malayalam? So the point is, you want to focus on a segment or something where you can make a differentiation, and no guy in Silicon Valley ever is going to compete with you if you're so focused on making Malayalam and Ayurveda and going deeper into that. So the point is to think through where your differentiation is going to be and compete effectively.
Thank you, Venkat. I mean, very interesting what you mentioned right now. Now, my next question is for the investors over here. That's Avnish and Venkat. In this fast evolving landscape of AI, we see a lot of startups emerging which are solving very, very similar problems or existing use cases. So what is your perspective on the concept of the first mover advantage? Do you still think there's a value in being an early mover in the space? Or do you think we should wait for the technology to mature, gain a better understanding of the use cases, and then potentially uncover more investment paradigms? I know we touched upon a little bit on this in the first panel, and even Rohit mentioned a little bit on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I'll go back to the stack. So the first mover advantage depends on where you're playing. So if I am at the bottom GPU layer, for example, I think NVIDIA has a first mover advantage. It is something equivalent of ARM, totally dominating the mobile market. For example, Intel could not do anything about it. I think NVIDIA is in a similar position here. That said, as you go up the layers, I think people are not going to give up on this. So for example, Sam Altman, OpenAI came, but equally there is stiff competition in that layer as well. And as you go progressively up, I personally do not believe that somebody is going to cede ground so easily, because we are just starting this race and there are enough people with enough resources to compete effectively. But at the bottom layer, like the big three cloud guys and perhaps CoreWeave is there, it's kind of taken, I think. It's going to be very, very hard to go and compete at that level. But as you go up higher the stack, I think it's open season. Where the differentiation is going to be coming is not necessarily being the first mover, but do you have something deep, unique, and all these Me Too kind of players are going to be far away. So we shall see how that goes.
Right, yeah.
I think the answer to this question, probably we will see with the battle going on between OpenAI and Google, right? I think for a long time, Microsoft has been, sidelined, and at least from a search perspective, and Google was there, and now you see overnight almost by integrating Gen AI into all their products, Microsoft is now, way ahead in their partnership with OpenAI. So whether they will be able to maintain their first mover advantage or not, I think the answer will, get clear on that. But besides that, my perspective is that, you can't just wait for things to happen, because it is too muddled up at the moment. You feel that let the dust settle down and then we will start investing. I don't think that might be the right approach, because you have to get immersed in this. And the fact that things will emerge in the future and that is when you will start investing, I don't think that will be a very good idea. So you have to be in the game, as far as I am concerned. And first mover advantage, we always talk about the first mover curse, right? You see organizations like Nokia and BlackBerry, these were first mover players in their game, but they are no longer there. But the fact that they are no longer there is nothing to do with that they were first movers. It is that they were not able to adapt to the future changes which came in the industry. So as Venkat was saying as well, that I think from, with the foundational layers and with LLMs, that place is almost taken over now, right? It's too much costly for small startups to go and do stuff there. So I think the other thing is what we call the applied AI, right? The application part of AI, and I think that is where we can see probably a much more significant investment happening.
Right. And do you think, application layer companies like ChatGPT, would there be a stickiness there? Do they have an advantage? Or if more companies come up like ChatGPT, do you think there's going to be some kind of disruption again happening?
Well, I think it's difficult to answer that question, but yes, I think there is certain bit of stickiness for sure, but it is a very fast and evolving space, right? So I think there will be new transformational offerings and products which will come, and it will be a tough situation for ChatGPT and OpenAI to retain their position, that's for sure. But at the moment, they do have a first mover advantage.
Right. Yeah, you wanted to add something, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to add a practical perspective to this. So we started research in 2019 and we have built a data which is I would say the moat, not the model. So there is always, there is two parts to it. One is data, one is the model. So if you have the data, if you're building the data from day one, that's definitely going to help you as a first mover advantage. It's going to give you that. And if you already have data, let's say you have your customer insights, you have your data, I wish you use that as your moat and build on top of that and apply that on these models and produce results. So I would say the first mover advantage would be the way you collect the data. 80% is data. There is nothing about the models. Anybody has access to the models. The question is data, right? So that's number one. Number two is primarily you need to look at the quality of data, how updated it is, and how well you're able to make use of it, how useful it is. This is a basic business principle which we need to apply on the data as well, and that would be a better moat according to me.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I think it's absolutely right. If you look at ChatGPT and the first mover advantage we were talking about, right? You know, millions of people are using that.
Exactly.
All that data is going inside ChatGPT,
Yes.
right? And that is again making their product much more better and efficient, which the others at the moment don't have. So by the time they catch up, they would have already got all that data and retrained their models to be much more efficient. So I totally agree with him.
Adding to the same point, this is one disruption where the large incumbent players are at an advantage, unlike the startups doing the disruption, because the large guys are sitting on the data, have the distribution, etc. They can do it much better. And to Ram's earlier point, because unlike other disruptions where people have to change their business processes, etc., which makes them slow, in these cases, they can continue to retain the business process and just plug in this AI. So the incumbents, so the large players are at an advantage for the data and other reasons. So it will be interesting to watch what the startups have to say about this in this new world of disruption.
Yes, this was quite insightful. And my next question would be to Ram. So because, you know, again, like I mentioned, there are so many startups coming up solving the same use cases. How do you think startups can stand out to be differentiated and defensible? And what approaches do you think they should be taking?
Yeah, so if someone is going to use, let's say, OpenAI's API and just going to consume it, I would say like it's not a differentiator. It's already democratized, and it's very easy to do that. And if you want to really differentiate, as I mentioned before, it's data, 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 and how you collect data. And also, one more challenge I'm facing as a startup is that like getting people who understand not just the usage layer or the application layer of the data science or the models, someone who understands how it works and able to tweak for our advantage and actually fine tune it with our data, right? So if you can find a team or if you train yourself to do that, I would say like that's number two. And number three, it takes time. So we have done 34 experiments before getting one working model with our data. So you need to have a lot of patience and you need to try and this very easily you can give up. So you need to try this hard and try to make it work. Initially it will be like, just look at the world. We have a lot of text data because we can scrap whatever we want from the internet, and we have a lot of image data, right? So there is no data for example, in our use case, like layered designs, right? So you won't even get more than 10,000 or 5,000, right? So how do you create something like that? So that value prop, if you're able to build data and you're able to generate that data, then when users uses it, it will create a data flywheel effect. So you'll be able to create more data. Data creates data. Money creates money. Fame creates fame. So data creates data. So that's exactly what we should do. We should just start with the seed data as a startup and keep building the data using the data. So that's kind of an advice I would give for the startups.
I'd like to add another dimension to it. Yesterday we actually had the Accenture Ventures Challenge. We have an annual contest, and one of the startups which won in the Gen AI space is a startup called Able. And Able, the way they bring differentiation is that they look at using Gen AI for enterprise analytics, but with the required guardrails already in place. For example, hallucination is being taken care of already. right? Data protection, privacy, data residency, customization. So the way they are differentiating from any other chatbot is that all these issues which are regarding responsible AI have been put in the guardrail by Able already, right? So that's another way of looking at differentiation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. So the way we get to the insights of how the model is getting used, security, ethics, and hallucination, as he said, it's very important. I would say like that will even act as a moat for the startups.
Right, Venkat, would you also like to add something?
I mean, guardrails, ethics, all these are important. And back to my earlier point, one has to focus on where you're going to excel. And privacy has become a huge challenge. Left, right, and center, this Gen AI is going and abusing things. Right. And I know of one company called Privasapien, primarily focused on privacy, and they have created a GPT called PrivaGPT. This is what I call the small LM, for example. And I'm saying with all these problems that are being exposed, the other thing is carbon footprint. I mean, we talked about Bitcoin just like creating havoc. This is going to create a lot more havoc from the kind of compute and etc. And so opportunities are galore around, not necessarily within the Gen AI thing, but around in the ecosystem. And one has to figure out the right product and go to market. And hopefully you'll have an early mover advantage.
Thank you so much, Venkat. And the final question for our panelists. In the context of riding the Gen AI wave, what strategies and approaches do you think investors and startup founders should employ to capitalize on this short-term hype to ensure a long-term growth in this field? So we can start with Venkat.
Okay. Avnish touched on use cases, multiple industries, etc. And at least it is very important for this ecosystem to demonstrate some traction, industry adoption. We all know what happened with blockchain and metaverse, etc. So focus on certain verticals. So the verticals ripe for Gen AI seems to be, in my opinion, education, health, where people are looking for precision medicine, personalized education, virtual tutoring, and so on. So it's very clear, at least healthcare, education, perhaps BFSI and retail and so on and so forth. From a horizontal functional perspective, the most advanced cases happens to be in customer service and support, marketing, and so on and so forth. So enter into these segments where the adoption is likely to be higher, demonstrate traction, and then look, because the whole industry requires some real tangible successes, ROI and value creation for this to take on.
Avnish,
I think Venkat has said everything. At the moment with generative AI, I think it is generating everything except profit, right? So I think, yes, the fundamentals do not change, right? You have to look at the fundamentals, and value creation has to be real. Right. But on the other hand, you have to take some risks as well, right? You can't just sit there and say that things are going to evolve as they are. So it's going to be a delicate balance between the two. And ultimately, profits, revenue, and the core metrics which we have been looking at earlier are not going to change much.
Right. Ram, yes.
Yeah. So I do feel it's nothing has changed, and I really feel that it's going to help us reach our application to even more people. Just imagine a world where there's no mobile. How many people an e-commerce company would have been able to attract? And now the market size will keep growing, right? So because of the mobile revolution, I think we have increased the market size. And I strongly believe it's going to do the same thing with the AI. It's going to enable it for people who don't even know English, who can not even able to use the mobile. They don't know the interface, how to use the mobile interface. They can actually pay. They have the paying potential, but they can't use it. Maybe you can just converse and get your job done now. So it's technically going to increase the market size for many products. So we should look at it in that way. I do believe that basic principles of business stays the same.
Right.
So
regardless of any software innovation, that remains the same.
Yeah.
So I think nailing it is the key after all.
See, nothing has changed and everything has changed.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you again so much. I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask us. No questions? Please don't be shy.
Everything is clear, I think. Just like Gen AI.
Yes, Mohan.
So from the entrepreneur point of view, AI is definitely, it makes everyone a curious kid all of a sudden. And all of us are, in a way, curious about AI. We know that in the dot-com bubble, you have to transform your business ready for the dot-com. And if not, you're irrelevant.
Right.
Coming from LLMs to applied AI, I think some of the LLMs are closed and few of them are open source. So what does it take to start using one of the open source LLM, let's say in your domain specific, let's say healthcare or whatever? How much of domain knowledge do you need to have, or just find a gap in the business and get some tech guys there and see that the gap is full? How do you think that works? To Ram.
Yeah, fantastic question actually. So if you take the LLM, even the smaller size model, let's see GPT-2 and GPT-3. Okay, GPT-3 has so much parameters, which means that it also needs training data in billions. So as a startup, it's impossible for us to do that. So what we should do is, it will be very mindful if you pick up GPT-2 now and build the data for that, you need something in millions, which is practically possible for you to solve. And that's exactly what these open source models and open source people also doing it. So I strongly believe there is two sects to this. One is a generalized solutions, one is specialized solutions. So specialized solutions, we don't need such a large model, and it's going to perform bad. On record, it's going to perform bad. So if I compare a model which is trained for healthcare versus ChatGPT, ChatGPT will perform bad, which means startups have the value creation possibility with very less capital, whatever it is. Yesterday, Sam said that it's not possible to do with a 10 million. I totally agree with him, but there's a context to that. He's saying that it's not possible to do that with 10 million to do ChatGPT. But we don't need to create ChatGPT. That's the take we should take. We should go towards a specialized solutions and verticalized solutions, which is possible to achieve with that kind of a, capital. So it's definitely possible. I want to simplify this point to the startups. There is a lot of hype and there is a lot of noise that we can't do that kind of a noise, which we need to declutter and see that it's definitely possible for us to do specialized models.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes.
Ram, I have a question for you. While we always talk about crypto bubble and equate it with now the AI buzz right now, I feel that crypto was complex and in an attempt to replace money somewhere, what led to its failure, right? But the democratization of AI, generative AI, and its widespread easy use and easy interface for the users is what's going to keep it in the long run and make it really good. What do you think about it?
So, sorry, I didn't get the question. What's the question?
So I think the democratization of AI and now it is being widely used by people and it's so easy to use. Is it going to make it go a long way?
Yeah, it's absolutely it's going to make it. It's already democratized. So, so all of us can easily integrate into our business today. So, it's like a website which was there, which is only designed for the web, and then we created something called responsiveness, and we created something called mobile web. Now we are just making this interface go away and just creating a chat interface for that. As simple as that. It's an interface. So it's going to revolutionize the way we use it, and it's going to help us more then it's going to really change. Probably the disruption is a good word, but I feel that it's going to help many businesses, and it's going to disrupt certain type of businesses, like information businesses will be disrupted, but other businesses which are based on logistics and other aspects, verticals, will not be disrupted, will be beneficial with this generative AI. So it's not crypto. So mobile and AI, I would see them together very similar. Than dot-com bubble and crypto, I put them into the same buckets. So dot-com bubble, mobile is not a bubble, and crypto is a bubble, AI is not a bubble.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? I guess that's it for the day. So thank you so much, panelists, for your time and for your insights, perspectives, and thoughts on this topic. And it was quite an insightful conversation, and I'm sure all of us had a lot to learn from it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
With this, we're done. A huge shout out to our panelists and Access Studios and Samsung for the entire setup. And of course, all of you entrepreneurs for coming here and networking. Thank you so much.